Hi, I'm Scotty from Strange Parts, and you're listening to the Scene World podcast.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. This is Scene World. I'm AJ. Jörg is right there. How's it going?
Hello. Good.
In a minute, who are we talking to today?
Who we are talking to? Yeah, well, we are talking to Valerio Cannone and Peter Smets, aka Frankie in the demo scene, and they are working on a new Supergun for arcades.
Now, Valerio we've had on before as part of the
our card repair thing.
Right. And then Frankie, I feel like I'm not sure he was on the podcast, but I think you did a thing with him, yes?
Yeah, he was part of the Frankfurt Film Museum interviews that we did in 2015. That was a whole series.
Exactly.
And I did an interview with him about his history in the C64 scene and about him personally for our history videos on YouTube. And also I did an interview with him for the Fur Movement Only in Seligenstadt, live there with audience, which is also part of our I would say history interviews stream. So well, maybe I should mention it again in case you wanted to subscribe to that or look to that. This can also be found at sceneworld.org/history. Yes. Then you're getting the MP3 versions of those interviews. And you can subscribe to the RSS feed.
Yeah, you can also find them wherever podcasts are sold. Same as here. In fact, if you do a search for Scene World, oftentimes you'll see two entries. One is this podcast, one is your history interview things. So
exactly. Yeah, anyway, also there has been some news to the homepage. So if you actually go to sceneworld/podcast, or if you go to the podcast directory via sceneworld.org, you will see that every entry now actually leads to the archive.org. And for the interview section, it also leads to archive.org. So we changed the buttons where you can actually get the MP3 versions or linked to archive.org. So that's quite nice. We've mentioned them a couple of times. Our archive.org is actually known for their Wayback Machine, where you actually can visit homepages from 1996 up to today, and where they took snapshots on different dates. Right. And that's absolutely amazing. So if you have any website that you miss and is not around anymore and you need some information, you can still get the information. It's not lost. It's really great.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So enough about us. So we should start about the news.
Yes.
What have you got?
So we got a couple of things that have occurred that I've noticed. One of these is there's a new 64 game that's been released. It's actually, I guess it was an Amiga game originally and has now just been released on the C64. It's called Endless Forms Most Beautiful. Which
never heard of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting looking platformer, sort of bubble bobbly kind of thing. I'm not exactly sure how it plays, but there's apparently a free download, so evidently, I'm reading it may have actually been a Spectrum game originally, then it went to the Amiga, and now it's out on the 64, so that's cool. I'm not entirely sure who has produced it. I see some names attached to it, but I don't recognize them. But it looks good. Yeah, it looks good. It's a cool-looking thing. So we'll put a link to that where people can check it out.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, hey, did you see the new Star Trek trailer for the Picard series?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
That looked very interesting. 7 of 9 is back.
Yeah.
And Data.
It can't be Data, though, because Data's dead.
I know.
I'm thinking, because, so this obviously has a big Borg thing in it, right? Because you got 7 and 9, they showed like a Borg cube and all that stuff. So there's apparently a Borg component. And Lore was pretty involved with the Borg.
Was she also Borg?
Lore?
Yeah?
No, Lore was Data's brother.
Resistance is futile.
Yes. But remember, Data's brother had taken over part of the Borg for a while.
I know.
So I'm thinking that the guy that they pull out of the drawer there may actually be Lore.
Yeah, but there has been a live interview by IGN on the Comic-Con 2019 where Patrick Stewart and some of his co-actors actually talked about this.
Yeah.
So maybe we should link to that and people should check it out.
Yeah. It looks really good though. I'm super jazzed. I have not been jazzed about a Star Trek series in a while, but this has got me pretty excited.
Well, jazz is not bad, but I prefer pop music.
Yeah. It depends. Like I'm not a big fan of jazz, but like David Bowie jazz, I'll give it to Bowie. Bowie can do jazz.
Well, it's better to say I'm jazzed than I'm popped.
Yes, that's true.
Except if you're a farmer, then you're probably a fan of popcorn. My jokes don't get better with
no, they don't.
with trying hard.
They don't. No.
Gosh. Also for the first time in my life, I learned with this interview that a supergun is not a gun.
Oh, it isn't? What is it?
It's a signal converter.
Oh.
And it's an interface for interfacing controllers and all that stuff.
Okay, cool.
To your arcade hardware. So a super gun is not a gun.
Okay. It's not a gun, but is it super?
It's wonderful.
So, other piece of news here, from straight out of the Belgian Amiga Club, is a dude named Jeroen Vendezand. Vendezand? I don't know how to say that.
Okay.
Has designed the Amiga 1200 Plus, which is a re-implementation of the A1200 board, started from schematics. So so you need all the original AA chips, like the Lisa, Paula, Alice, and the 2 CIA chips and the keyboard controller. Gale, Budgie, and the RAM has been removed, and all that stuff is put on a daughter board, which can also contain a CPU. Video output has been moved to another output board. They removed the PCM CIA slot, and they replaced that with some switches and a US, or rather, and an SD card slot. They've added a couple of fan headers to the board. And I guess there's an extension board connector for the keyboard that gives you USB ports for that. So
nice.
That's currently being worked on. It looks like it's still in prototyping phase. There's a production board available. The colors don't look like they're quite right, but it exists. And so the cool thing about that is that with the video and the CPU and whatnot all on daughter boards, that means that it can easily take upgrades, and you can put like an RTG video card in there. There's lots of stuff you can do to it that you probably couldn't do to the original A1200. The downside is that you don't have the PCM CIA slot, so stuff like, Wi-Fi adapters and junk like that is kind of off for now. But that does look cool, and that comes on the heel of there was another re-implementation of the A1200 board a year or two ago by somebody else that was downloadable, and I've seen it for sale a couple of times. So this is kind of cool that they're keeping these things alive. I wish that there was a way that we could get away with not having to use the original chips. Like if they could do like an FPGA implementation of them, but otherwise, I mean, this is awesome and helps to keep this stuff going into the future.
But I still need new disk drives.
You mean you still need new disk drives?
Yeah, somebody should make new disk drives. We discussed that once before.
I know we did. I know. We discussed that a couple of times.
I know. Anyway, I got other news. Actually, Melody Iris Griffith actually sent an email today that the Paleotronic magazine, the retro magazine from Australia, has been released in its 5th issues now. And she sent to all subscribers PDF links to download.
Cool.
And I asked her, how about the printed version? Will it come? When will it come? Because the other 4 issues were also printed, and they were sent from Singapore because printing and shipping is cheaper in Singapore than Australia.
Right.
So I'm waiting to hear back from her.
Okay.
Yeah. And what other news we have? Yes, Chris Wilkins actually emailed that Fusion Magazine issue 6 is now available. So that's another retro magazine. We have so many retro magazines nowadays. It's really dizzy making. And the German Return magazine is celebrating the 10th anniversary. Congratulations.
Woot.
And this anniversary happens on September 28th this year.
Okay.
And for this, they will have an exhibition in the Binarium, a museum for home computers and video consoles in Dortmund, Germany. And people can get entry cards, tickets for €8 per person. And the URL for that would be return-magazine German, because it's a German magazine, .de/Produkt/Eintrittskarten. And of course we will put
Don't
link.
try spelling that on your own.
Exactly. Except if you know German, then you already got what I said. But that's good. That's good. More on the publishing side. That would also be already all my news for this.
Yeah, look at you, mister. I don't have any news this week.
Well, just looked at my email inbox. Keep them coming.
Yes. Well, then that's all I have too. So if that's all we got, then we should pop over and talk to Valerio and Peter.
Yes, about Superguns. Bang, bang, bang.
Or not.
So today we are again talking to Valerio Cannone.
Hi.
And Peter Smets, aka Frankie. Hi, Peter.
Hello. Hi there. Nice to see you again.
So I spoke to you a couple of times already, mostly about arcade repair, and for you, Frankie, with the demo scene and all that stuff. And you told me recently that actually you started now your own hardware project for arcades.
Yes, indeed. I think I mentioned it first to you at For Amusement Only about 6-7 months ago.
Exactly.
Because I was doing all the arcade stuff with Rostermania, buying PCBs, selling cabinets and stuff like that. But the market died out, so went into the next evil plan that I had was to make a Supergun, because we were selling them when we had them, and we noticed that people wanted them, although there were like no proper ones on the market. And you could get some, but they were like either not as good as I would like them to be, or completely over-engineered, or you could only get them at, like, if you were lucky to buy one of 20 from the guy on the right forum at the right day of the week.
Wow. So what is a Supergun for people who don't know?
For people who don't know, a Supergun is not a gun, but it's quite super. So a Supergun will allow you to connect an arcade machine to your TV or to your monitor or whatever, and you can then play it with self-built controllers. You have some that have Mega Drive controllers, so it will allow you to just connect an arcade PCB or any game or a Neo Geo or a Capcom CPS, and play it in like a smaller environment than your big arcade cabinet.
Wow.
Maybe say it in a few words. being able to connect an arcade game to the latest technology you have at home.
No, that's what we have done. That's not what you can do today. It's what we have done now.
Okay.
Yes.
Nah. Okay. So, and I see there is a gap between what you could do in the past and what you can do now, thanks to the piece you just developed.
Yes, indeed. So we came together. I think during the last World Cup soccer, the men's World Cup, and me and Valerio, we had a talk and say, okay, can we do this? And the answer was yes, we can do this. And it's as everything, it started as a small PCB layout sketch on a piece of paper, and we went from there. And then things got out of control, and suddenly we are working on real hardware.
Okay. And the reason why you had this idea and told it to Valerio was because you tried to connect an arcade to modern hardware?
I'm not that technical, so I know how it works, but I'm not a hardware guru. I'm not a software guru. Valerio is. And we've known each other for years through the demo scene, and it's like, oh, wait, aren't you a professional hardware designer? Aren't you, like, don't you have, like, a fetish for arcade games as well? Let's talk.
Okay. So how was it for you, Valerio? Was it crazy, or did you think there was no need for a super gun?
Actually, I am one of the first few people who actually need it for real. Because the problem with arcade games, I like arcade games. As I told you last time, I'm repairing them. One of the biggest challenge you have when repairing them is being actually able to debug the fault. So all help you can have is very well welcome. And I really needed something like that myself for my repairs. And of course, when talking to Peter about the Sting, he said, oh, but couldn't we have this and that? And also that one, and this or the other one. I said, yes, sure, we can have it, but it's becoming a product. That's exactly where I wanted to go, he said.
Yes.
So, what's the progress so far? I think you told me you showed a prototype in UK recently.
Yeah, we went to Revival and what was it? Well, in the UK, and we showed, like, we presented our ID there. We couldn't show working hardware yet, but we had we spent the week before the event trying to getting the bare PCBs through customs.
Yeah, because customs.
Because telling a very big German shipping company that you are sending something from China to Germany and then paying it from Belgium, the computer doesn't allow that.
Wow.
So we had to print like 20 sheets of paper declaring that I had some magical German serial number for the taxes. And then Valerio had to, like, swear on somebody's grave that he would pay the VAT to the driver. And then they released it, and I think it was there 2 days in time before before he had to leave to the event, instead of 1 week and a half, 2 weeks.
Wow. And was it successful, I hope?
The package came through, but of course there was not even enough time to try and populate the board. So we had to bring the empty bare PCB to the show. But meanwhile, things have progressed a lot, and there's a prototype which is actually up and running, and for which software is being written. So it's there a lot has been done. Of course, it's not ready for showing it to the people, like connecting our arcade board and showing stuff on the screen, but it's getting there.
So you mentioned the ability to connect your arcade PCB to, as I said, external controllers and external monitors, like modern hardware. Is there anything else it can do?
Well, I think if you look at the classic Supergun, what you will have is it will connect with an RGB SCART to a TV or an Amiga monitor because they have the same input. And then for the controllers, you would either need to connect to the Neo Geo joystick, which has a special pinout, but it has all the buttons and it's pretty straightforward. Of course, a Neo Geo joystick is not cheap. So you had Superguns or adapters that you could then put in Sega Mega Drive controllers, Genesis for those in NTSC worlds. And but you know you have three buttons or 6 buttons. So my design goal from the start would be that we could use more controllers that we have today, meaning USB devices. So on the Supergun, you will find 2 USB ports where you can plug in hopefully any, but a large amount of USB controllers that you can configure, and it will run. Also for the video output, you have the RGB SCART, which is the classic signal. However, we originally planned to go with RGB SCART, but you cannot source the connectors anymore. We could have 50 over there, 20 over there, 30 over there, but when we go even to a Chinese broker and say I want 500, they don't reply to you because they don't have them. So we decided that we would go to a VGA signal because that's also still analog and RGB, and there's still a lot of screens out there which take that signal. Of course, it means we have to do some working on the video signal, but what also means we can actually output the RGB 15 kilohertz on the VGA plug. So with an adapter, you can turn it into a SCART.
Okay.
So we're not throwing the original signal away.
So what's the reason you didn't go for HDMI or DVI?
Well, HDMI because of licensing.
Okay.
And DVI is not impossible because we have a 24-bit digital video signal on the board as well that we do not include from the first version, but there are expansion options, and that could be one of them.
Okay, the expansion option looks like you say to Valerio, I want this adapter, and you do it for the customer, or what's the expansion option?
No, we have an expansion slot which can add digital video, digital audio. It has a USB port. It has and some other stuff for a future expansion, which is possible. So it is future proof. And if something new would come out, like an extremely good DVI encoder chip or a really good scaler chip, that we're not stuck with what we have.
Okay, interesting. So it's future proof, you could say.
Yes, that's exactly what I said.
Okay.
But also past proof. Let's say you want to have, for example, that very rare joystick you acquired, which you paid a lot of money for, which is not USB. Well, no problem. We can develop an extension that allows us to connect your joystick.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So if you want to use your AES joystick because you totally love it, there is the possibility. Not saying that we're gonna do it, but it's possible that we have an adapter board where you can then use it.
Okay. this sounds a bit like other hardware that is currently being made, like the Ultimate 64, who doesn't have a user port, but you have a breakout port, though that you can connect it at a later time when it's available. So it's kind of that future-proof expanding option, similar to that. How about the software? Will you, I don't know, is it something like you could update it with new features? Will there be regular updates? I mean, that's the thing nowadays. Everything in your household is connected to the internet and has updates permanently.
Well, there is no need to connect a video game from the 80s to the internet, so the board does not have internet connectivity. But of course, you can run a software update on that through USB stick, no problem. You download the file, you put it on the USB stick, and it will upgrade itself, no problem.
Okay, interesting. So you thought about that because with all those adapters you have nowadays, I actually had the problem, that I bought an adapter for adapting PAL M, which is from Brazil, to my European PAL here in Germany, and there was a firmware bug, and the manufacturer told me that they cannot fix it because the device doesn't allow you to make updates to the software on it. So,
ouch.
Right. And I don't know if the solutions that are available currently, before you come out with your version of such an adapter, if they have any possibility of, applying firmware updates.
I have seen a couple of these Supergun boards, but most of them look like they're done around a simple microcontroller, for which, yes, you could update the software, but you would need to buy the debug rig, which you then connect to the board, and you need to get a software update from the manufacturer and then upload it. Use its software and stuff. You need to know what you're doing, otherwise you fry the board. It's not just as plug and play as a USB stick, yeah?
So your solution will be user-friendly, and as I understood it, right now you have like tons of versions done by different people that are really hard to get. So yours will be the first commercial version that is not over-engineered, has a full future-proof concept, and people can get it without a problem. Which leads me to the question, how about the market you aim? I mean, arcade is a special thing because in Asia, for example, in Japan, there is still a market for arcade, while here in Germany, for example, it's just collectors. So who are you aiming with the product?
Everybody who get to do with arcades. So collectors are one part, of course, but you also have the casual gamers who, I have sold PCBs to people that, they have one or two boards. I've had, for instance, one guy, he was a collector of Mega Drive, and then he would like to be able to play all the arcade games of the Mega Drive games that he liked. So that's one. Talking to a lot of guys in the UK at Revival, was also that things we didn't think about is that actually use it inside a cabinet. So you put the arcade board in there, you put our Supergun in there, and you can use USB controllers. You have a VGA out, you have an audio out, instead of doing the entire wiring. And because there's software on there, you can do your settings, you can import them, you can export them, because we have all USB things. So that's even markets we didn't think about. that they came up with. So it's basically everybody who would like to play an arcade game at home, is it for testing? Is it for repairing? Is it for casual playing? Is it for collecting? Is it to put inside other cabinets? It's very versatile, and you can go everywhere with it.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned this repairing help here. Let's maybe see it from Valerio's view. I mean, even back in the days, they must have repaired arcade boards without having such tools.
Oh, definitely. But they did have plenty of arcade-grade RGB CRT monitors, which we don't nowadays. They had all the parts that they needed to create a joystick on the fly just to repair the board. Yes, sure, they had the power supplies and everything. But today, since arcade boards requires some negative voltages, which were only available, I guess, in the XT PC era, if you remember, those are not available anymore. You don't find the power supplies for PC that have those negative voltage rails. So if you don't have those voltages, then you're basically stuck. Or you have to buy an arcade-grade power supply from eBay, which might be used or might be not reliable. And we solve this problem on the board. So basically, you just provide the board with 5 volts, which you can get everywhere. And the Supergun generates all voltages that are required by the game. And also, since you spoke about the extension and all the stuff, that's another thing that's, I think it might be a world first, because I've seen a lot of Superguns, but nobody seems to do this. Everything that's audio and video, it's completely digitally processed on our board. Whereas I've seen other Superguns, they have just take the analog signal from the input, bring it to the output, and be done with it. So quality is also a selling point for this kind of product.
Which leads me to the question, is there any CRT emulation involved or anything like that? I mean, there are tons of solutions that emulate such things to get the old experience also on modern screens. For example, I guess the most famous one would be FrameMeister.
Yes, I mean, FrameMeister is a very known product, but it's also quite expensive, and it is just a scaler. So you have a video input, you have a video output. That's it. It's not a Supergun. You still would have to wire your joystick and video signals and everything, and people simply does not know how to do this, or most of the people doesn't, or doesn't want to bother with it. We bring an all-in-one solution that's going to solve all the problems. Mm-hmm. With respect to the question you made about CRT emulation, the first goal is, of course, to make the signal visible on the monitor and with an acceptable quality. Whereas by acceptable, I mean better than what other Superguns do, of course. And once that is done, sure, there will be firmware updates which will enhance the customer experience, definitely.
Now, you say, well, you convert the signal for the video output and so on digitally. So does this resolve the problems that we still have nowadays with a different broadcast standard for TVs? I mean, even nowadays you can have NTSC PAL signal issues, even with HDMI. For example, I remember when the C64 Mini was released, the European version came first because it's a British company who produced them. And when they were shipped to some YouTubers from America, they barely could find a TFT screen, a modern screen that would work, that would handle the PAL signal via the HDMI input that was required by the C64 Mini, while here in Europe, almost any TV since the 90s and even the modern TVs can do NTSC. So how about that?
Whereas Americans cannot do PAL because they're not interested, because they rule the world. I'm sorry for the.
Well, I just wonder how you will cover those problems, or will there be no problem at all? Will this device work without any modification, or will it have auto detection? Because I've seen such devices or similar devices, and you can see that sometimes you need a special Brazilian version, or sometimes you need the European version, an American version, and I wondered how you go about that.
So about this, first of all, you need to consider the input side, because every arcade board has its own preferred timing on the video signal. So you need to be able to acquire the signal with the utmost quality, the best quality ever possible, in order to be able to render it. Otherwise, if you acquire crap, no matter what you do digitally, it's going to be crap on the screen. And second, the one thing that no other Supergun has is the digital processing of the video. You know, the FrameMeister has something inside that's called a scaler, that's going to adapt a video signal at a certain resolution to a monitor that requires another timing completely different, or another resolution. And that's one thing you can only do if you convert the signal to digital, process it, and then output it at the rate the monitor wants to have. So you typically on other Superguns, you will need to have the Supergun and then a scaler, and make them work together so that you can actually see the image on a TFT monitor. Our intention with this product is to bring both things into one, so that there is no other stuff the user has to buy, not just to see the signal. And once you have that in the digital domain, you can make changes, and therefore you can adapt, although to a certain degree, to the monitor that's gonna try and display the image. So if it can only render PAL signals or NTSC signals, you can try and adapt it so that you can see the signal in its entirety, although maybe with black bands or a smaller scale, but it will still work.
Or like in Brazilian signal case, in Europe you have a picture, but you don't have color. You have just black and white. So the short answer is your product will work in all regions without any headaches.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Okay, and that means it also includes the obscure signal from Brazil, because that's basically a region where manufacturers rule it out.
May I say you're talking about NTSC-M or PAL-M? I don't remember, but
PAL-M, yeah, PAL-M, because Brazil has the timing of let me think, the timing of Europe, of the European broadcast standard, but the color signal of Americans.
Yeah.
Well, as Valerio said, the discussion of the NTSC, PAL-M, or SECAM in France on arcade board doesn't matter, because each board uses its own frequency. It's RGB. RGB does not have a fixed resolution, which is why in an arcade cabinet you would have to twist the buttons to stretch the screen and roll it where the board was outputting it. So we would have to handle all the different inputs and then make all these turny knobs configurable in software. and from there then output something to a VGA signal, which is which is pretty standard.
Yeah, that means you don't have any problems with how to
let's say like PAL-M or PAL or NTSC won't be the problem. There will be others.
Okay, so but you are quite sure you can handle them.
We have good confidence that we picked the right video chip.
Great. All right. So, what is the scale you are thinking about? Do you plan to, I don't know, just put it on the market, or do you want to, I don't know, go to Japan first? I mean, I wonder how big your scale with the product is. Do you want to penetrate the whole market on all countries at once? Or do you want to make it like, I don't know, a niche product? Or will it be more mass market?
We hope to be somewhere in between, of course, because we're in Western Europe. That would be our first target market, because those are the collectors in Germany, UK, France are all really close to us. So we're also we're already talking to some guys in the UK on UK VAC that will that have offered their help for testing when we are there, because right now we're not. But of course, yeah, this is a worldwide product, but for that we would be looking at resellers and distributors in other regions. So it is completely stupid to ship a board from here to Australia or to the US or to Japan one by one with the shipping costs. So we are open for distributors once we have a product, and then we ship one box over once with 5, 10, 50, 100 boards in them.
So, interestingly that you mention it, I noticed recently that even Amazon started distributing retro games and all that stuff. And some are even exclusive for Prime members. So I was surprised that even Amazon joined the market. But I guess you will not go this route, but probably look at some other ways of distribution.
I'm perfectly fine if Amazon wants to buy 50 from us to put on their site of 500. I would consider. Valerio, you would as well?
For me, it's not a problem.
Yeah,
it's not a problem who sells it.
No, it is that my personal opinion is that arcade games are out there to be played, and if you make this a niche product that you can only order on one magical website only in the second week of the month, then you will not open it up to people who want to play a casual game. Then you will only target the hardcore collectors that know when to get it, where to get it. We want a global availability for the board. So that's the goal. So do not do everything ourselves. We will, as said, we will be open for international partnerships.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm just asking because as soon as you go the broad market, you have new problems to think about, like translation of documentation, customer support, and all that stuff that you usually don't have to think about if your product is more for the niche market, as I said, for the freaks, for the hardcore arcade guys. Then you don't have to worry about documentation in German or whatever, and customer support, because those people probably know what they want and what they are doing, or at least have some basic knowledge of what they can expect.
Yeah, customer support and user manuals, you don't do them in a written language. Learn from Chinese and Japanese. They have user manuals which are mostly pictures because their language is so complicated that not everybody can speak proper Japanese or Chinese or whatever. So you do pictures, you don't do text, because then everybody can understand. Plus, this might get me to present the product in Japan. I have never been to Akihabara, so that comes as a good thought.
Yeah. Yes.
Good point.
Yes. We're open for invitations to Japan.
Yeah, definitely.
Fun. I have been there already 2 years ago. I can say it was worth it a lot. And especially all these arcade centers. You would really love them, I guess. Yeah, interesting. So what's the time scale? When do you want to, well, I don't know, reach the RC status, the release candidate?
Well, let's see where we are now.
Okay.
So what we have is a prototype, which is now being worked on software-wise, and the internal goal was that if we have something in a beta by the end of summer, or in like early autumn, that would be fine. And then, of course, we would have a few prototypes. So then we have to go into big production, which will also take a few months. So, but if it takes time, then it takes time. Like, we want something that works from the first time, and not just ship it with a bootloader that says download new firmware and fix me. So, like, availability, and end of the year, early next year at the earliest. We want to do this properly. Looking at where we are now, Valerio mentioned me that that we're still doing the driver software. So, like, an application, we don't have Hello World on it yet. We're making drivers to talk to all the components on the board now.
Interesting. Yeah, but drivers is another point. Will it connect to PC, for example?
No, because the USB ports are OST port, which is required in order to be able to connect the joypads, and there is no other connectivity available on board. But there is a very nice feature that's planned. We want to have it, which is being able to record your gameplay, not video-wise, not audio-wise, but input-wise. So the board should be able to record your inputs from ever since the game gets reset to up to until when you finished your game. This will be recorded to a file which you can store on the USB stick. And once you have this, you can basically create super plays that you can replay not on YouTube, but on the real hardware.
Great. Yeah, that's something that is...
You can take a super play you've done with MAME, convert the file format, and then play it on the real hardware through the Supergun.
Great. Yeah. That's so. That's, for example, used. I think I saw this when there are projects that try to have an AI playing a game and learning how the game plays. They are also recording and recreating inputs, signals, and sequences. Okay, interesting.
There's one thing that I really hate when watching super plays on YouTube. Most of them are played out of MAME. Yeah, okay, MAME is cool. As I said last time, it's the best software ever. But what about showing a super play on a real arcade board? Nobody can, because it's difficult to put something in the middle that can control the board automatically from a from a file, and that would be a world first. Nobody has that.
And as you said, it doesn't include a streaming function. So how?
No, audio and video do not get recorded, so you cannot. I mean, you can always connect something externally to the video output and audio output and record that externally. Yes, of course, but the board is not going to do that on its own.
Okay. Now, let me ask you, I don't know if this is a secret, but what is the price point you're actually trying to pin for the final product? Will it be requiring deep pockets?
How deep are your pockets?
Depends on how good the product is.
No. It's like because we are now talking to somebody who's obviously interested. How deep would your pocket be for something like this? We're now doing market research.
Well, let's
okay. I would say like a 50 euros.
Well,
maybe that would be the entry level.
Okay.
And maybe I would go up to 100.
No, I'm going to interrupt you. Like,
okay.
Looking at the functionality, think of a price of an OSSC or a FrameMeister, because we're offering the same functionality partly.
I don't remember what a FrameMeister costs, but I think about 300, 400 euros.
In that range.
Yes, in that range.
Yeah, okay.
And that's pretty much the similar price to the X converter. There's this converter with the X in the title. Can't remember. That's pretty much like FrameMaster. They say it's even better.
I'm not at home in the converter market, so I'm not telling. But no, the price point we are aiming for is 150 euros.
150?
Yes.
So actually half of the FrameMeister's price.
And you can connect an arcade board to it and USB.
Yeah, which of course all the other products don't have. At least not in this. They have completely different goals.
Exactly.
A FrameMeister, an open source scan converter, is to have an existing RGB signal, either 15 kilohertz, 31 kilohertz, whatever, and make a DVI, HDMI from it, and do it with as little lag as possible, and you can tweak each frame or field. And we are not doing this. We are making a device that will allow you to play our arcade boards to current technology. So would they be able to coexist? As in, would you be able to put the VGA signal from the Supergun through an OSSC or a FrameMeister? Very likely. If you want to do that, go ahead. But that's not what we're doing. Looking at price points of the Superguns, what you said indeed, a basic Supergun, which does, as Valerio explained, take the input and just throws it out there on a SCART connector, and with some ICs makes a Sega controller happen, is in the 50 to 70 euro range. Like the I used to sell them anyway. It's not important what the name is. So that's a basic one. If you go look now on any website for a Supergun that has a bit more functionality, but not much, it's 100 euros plus. So even at 150, could we ask more? Yes, but then we would get into niche market territory, which is not where we want to be. So
okay.
Yeah, I am pretty sure we can ask 200, 300 euros for this, and we will sell. But then you only sell to the hardcore collectors,
or to the businesses in Japan or China, where arcades are still a topic. But of course, in those countries, you have more modern arcades that don't have the problems of old screen, old input.
A modern the Supergun we're doing is of no use when you have Naomi game, because the inputs are completely different, and we're not while we do have a connector for a kick harness, so that when you're playing Street Fighter 2 or whatever CPS version or Mortal Kombat, that you can input your extra buttons. We're not doing an entire harness for saying whatever's on the market now. And if you look at the arcade games from the last 5 or 10 years, inside they're basically PCs anyway, so that's not what we're aiming for.
And they have a JVC interface that's completely different from JAMA. It's relying on RS485, and it's basically completely different stuff. But anyway, there's still a lot of, for example, shooters, because I love shooters. There is a lot of shooters which are still extremely expensive nowadays, like the cave shooters. I don't know, Dodonpachi, Saidai Ojo, and all those stuff. It's stuff that's still new, and MAME has some of them emulated, but just because they have been abandoned by the factory. But these games are sold in Japan, people buys them and wants to play them, and those have JAMA interface.
Interesting.
And if you want to buy a game like, you want to buy Dead Smiles, for example, just an arcade shooter, that costs easily north of the 1,000 euros.
Oh, wow.
Easily.
Okay.
You want to buy nowadays R-Type, that's last price I've seen, that's 700 euros for bootleg.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Bootleg.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Japan, you find the original, that's gonna cost twice as much. Plus,
Wow.
Japan, it's expensive, so expect like something in the 1,600. I mean, there are some arcade games that are extremely expensive. Those kind of people wouldn't bother paying even 400 euros for a Supergun that does proper job. But as he said, that's not really our market.
I noticed you are not going the crowdfunding way, which is what most projects do nowadays.
I've looked at crowdfunding, and like the most obvious choice, which is Kickstarter. There is so much overhead in cost and everything that we would have to raise the price with at least 50 euros. Just to have it make sense for us financially, because that's the overhead that Kickstarter has, and you have all your companies that do your shipping and your handling and your mailing, and it's just like no.
And your company has to have a branch in the US, because US law. And also, a funny thing, just a funny thing. I heard more and more about scams which are carried on Kickstarter.
Or Indiegogo, for example.
Yeah, people drawing stuff, just a video of a super mega game and then getting the funding and disappearing with the money. I don't know. We have never been on Kickstarter, so probably people would think twice before thinking we're genuine. And we do not want to be mistaken with scammers.
Yeah. So for now, crowdfunding is not something that's on our planning. We have looked at it, but are not going to go that way at the moment.
So you will probably start with small batches and then see how well it sells.
Actually, no, because a small batch will cost more than a big batch.
Okay.
It will cost you as much to make 20 PCBs at a fab as to make 100 PCBs. So you might as well just go for the one. It's your startup cost, and you have to make arrangements for all the parts up front. You have to. So if you say I want to make 100 boards, you have to pay 100 parts, and then you get only the first time, but you pay everything anyway. It's not how that works. So it's we're now doing a small batch for the prototypes, and they're also put together by hand. But once we go into production, it will be bigger batches with good availability.
And machine assembled.
Well, yes.
How I guess you already worked together with PCB factories from China and all that. From the past, I heard a lot from project owners that said that China has a big problem in understanding how these retro components work. And for example, let's say the DTV, the first units had a color problem because in the Chinese factory they wired the ICs wrong and all that stuff. How about your experience with that? Or is that not a problem at all? You just give them your design and it's all good?
Yeah, well, my experience with that is people. They're gonna make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But in Germany, you could call the fab and say, hey, here there's a problem. This IC has been mounted, I don't know, the other way around. Or these two ICs have been swapped together. Whereas in China, you have to say, great, you did a good job, but it could have been done better. And which means you have to put up with a certain fault rate from the stuff that gets delivered, which means, of course, printing stuff in China is cheaper, but you have to account for testing each and every single unit that comes in and verify that that's really correctly working and everything's fine, which is something we're going to do anyway.
Okay.
So, yes, China is cheaper, but comes with its drawbacks.
But you would rather go for a better price point than have it manufactured in Europe and have to get the prices up?
It depends on how much you want to you want to pay as a customer. I mean, printing a bare PCB today in Europe is probably going to cost north of the 300 euros.
Whoa.
Whereas in China, printing the bare PCB, it's going to probably cost something more in the range of the 150 euros.
Wow, okay.
I don't think customers would accept to pay double the price just to get the unit manufactured in Europe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Of course, the thing is how you handle the first batches and all that. I mean, for example, I know that, as I said, the DTV, there are 3 versions of the PAL variant because of manufacturing error, and they sold the products anyway. Or another prime example is the Commodore 1, where it has a design flaw, and all PCBs from the Commodore 1 has hand-wired flying wires on it, so it's correcting what went wrong in the factory by design. I always found this quite interesting, and even back in the 80s, Commodore made flying wire experiments on some boards. But I guess as I said, you have a certain type of overhead, and then you just redo it and get a better version out.
In the business world, that's of course the problem that you need to meet a deadline. And if you fucked up with your design, the Chinese printed exactly what you told them to print or to assemble, but it's maybe your fuck up. So you can tell them, please wire up this fix to each and every board. They will do it. but it still remains your fuck up. In my opinion, delivering a product to the customer with flying wires and stuff, it's not professional. So I do want to deliver a board that's fully functional, and just from the look of it, you can see it has no flaws in printing and stuff. That's gonna take a little bit more time. That's why also he said, let's wait till the end of the summer or maybe the end of the year, because we want to have a product that the customer will like.
Wow, that's a lot of information. We spoke 1 hour now about your product. It's incredible. It's great.
And we still haven't plugged it yet.
So where can people find more about it?
Well, what we have, first of all, the product has a name which we haven't used yet. So
it's not called Supergun 2 or something.
It's not called Supergun. The Supergun is called the Kodai16, Kodai16, Kodai16. There is a website, Kodai16.com. There also is a Facebook page for those who don't do websites anymore. On the website right now, you can subscribe to a mailing list where we will keep you updated. Same goes for the social media stuff, obviously. And right now we don't have much to post because writing drivers is boring. We can tell you we actually have a picture on there of a serial debug window that says loading firmware, so it does something. But yeah, that's
there's not much to show.
It's like extremely unsexy.
So let's make it a promise that next time we have an interview, we're gonna show you the product working.
Yes. What I can show you now is one of the PCBs. Valerio, will you scream when I take it out of the bag?
No, I will not scream, but try and do not touch the pads. Otherwise, we won't be able to solder components anymore.
I know.
ESD protection.
No, it's not ESD protection because the board is not.
There are no pads here, so I'm not touching anything.
The bare board is not ESD sensitive, but the bare pads, when they get fingerprints, they get oily and they do not solder well anymore.
So, so this is not vaporware. This is not a scam. We are doing this.
That's a good point. Every time there's some retro hardware, people call it vaporware.
Exactly. So this is actually real. We are doing this. We are getting somewhere. We have had good feedback from the community already. We always would like more, obviously. And we really hope that, we've been talking to some guys at Revival to first get our feet in the water, so that get the initial feedback from what over there are hardcore collectors. There are guys, forgetting the name because I suck at names, but we had a game at him which was guess the game. You would hold him up a random PCB and he would scream from 50 meters away which one it was because he knows every layout of every board from memory.
Wow.
Or like identify the bootleg, and then he would go, "Oh, it's an IRAM game because they're the only ones that use these kind of memory chips." So
great.
They're like smarter people than us. So that was good, and now we're looking for feedback and input from the rest of the community. Best way to do it is through the website or through the social media stuff. We're not on every forum, on every board. That's just we don't have a social media manager. That's me, and I can only spend so much time on this per day. So our outreach right now is quite limited. But then once we get further in the development, we'll get actually something to show. Because right now, we have a populated PCB with one jumper wire.
Actually, two jumper wires. and a connector that's soldered manually because
it didn't fit.
No problem.
Prototypes.
Yes, so
it's kind of stuff that's going to happen on prototypes.
Yes, I will send you the picture, or it's also on the website, by the way. You can fetch it from there.
So I'm really glad we made this happen. I'm sorry that I had to let you wait 5 minutes, but
yes, we are crying. Really devastated.
Yeah. Great. Thanks a lot. So I hope we meet each other soon again at some point, maybe at Formation Only, and maybe with the product.
As said, as soon as we have something that's working in a prototype sense, we're going to scream in your general direction. Anyway.
Great. Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure this is awesome. All right, guys. So thanks for taking the time, right?
Yep.
And looking forward to meet you soon in September. So thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye.
you.
See you soon.
See you soon. Ciao.